Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Lincoln Riley, USC kicking off the 2024 season in a little over 8 days. Want to look back at the last 6 to 8 months and talk about my 5 most important transfer portal additions USC made during this offseason. Now, I think there's this narrative around the national media that USC whiffed in the transfer portal. And yes, I'm not going to say like Dominic Williams, Derek Harmon, those were some big targets for USC that they did not land. But you go back over the last 8 months, they brought in a lot of good football players in the transfer portal. Now it's our job to predict, kind of call our shot, which of these transfer portal additions are going to have the biggest impact on this USC program in 2024. We did a very similar conversation with the 5 most important true freshmen. The best part about doing that was all the feedback that you guys gave in the comment section. This is a very similar kind of episode where, there's really no right or wrong answer. I mean, there are a lot of good transfer portal additions that are coming into this USC program. I would love to hear from y'all in terms of how you stack the 5 most important additions that Lincoln Riley and this USC program made. Really excited to get into it now. Before we do, and as always, a massive shout out to the USC fans. And now heading into the 2024 season, I can't thank the USC fans enough for rocking with the boys really all offseason, talking recruiting, talking the transfer portal. There's not a ton of fan bases that show the amount of support that USC does in the middle of the summer when not many people are talking about college football. This has been a blast to talk about this program. The amount of support means the absolute world. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into this one. I'll start with maybe a little bit of a hot take. I would love to hear from you guys in the comment section here. The number 1 most important transfer portal addition. I'm going to go with Easton Mascarenas Arnold. I'm going to go with him for a couple of different reasons. One, this is a very good linebacker, one of the best off-ball backers that we saw available in the transfer portal. He was a first-team All Pac-12 guy last year for Oregon State, had over 107 tackles, over 30 run stops for Oregon State last year. But that's not the only reason that I'm going with Easton Mascarenas Arnold as the number 1 most impactful transfer portal addition. I think I'm going with him because not only he's a really good football player, I think he's going to make the other linebackers around him a little bit better too. You go back to 2023, a guy like Mason Cobb, there was a lofty expectations for Mason Cobb coming in from Oklahoma State. It was pretty evident that he didn't live up to those kind of expectations in the 2023 years. A new defense is a poorly run defense. I know Mason Cobb was dealing with some injuries. That being said, Easton Mascarenas Arnold comes in and he'll be kind of the captain of the defense, for the lack of a better word. He's going to be wearing the green dot. He's going to be calling the plays for this USC defense. And I think that's massive for Mason Cobb. Maybe Mason Cobb comes and says, I don't need to think a little bit. And you go back to 2023, Mason Cobb was the kind of doing what Easton Mascarenas Arnold is going to do in the 2024 season. But Mason Cobb had a true freshman linebacker lined up right next to him. I think there was a lot of responsibility that Mason Cobb had, and I think it might have just been a little too much on his plate. And so now you bring in Easton Mascarenas Arnold to kind of do Mason Cobb's job last year, kind of call the defense, run the defense, and now you're freeing Mason Cobb to do a little less thinking and a little bit more just playing football. What if Easton Mascarenas Arnold gives you all conference linebacker play, but then kind of taking some stuff off the plate from Mason Cobb? What if we get Mason Cobb back from the 2022 form we saw at Oklahoma State? That's why I'm going with Easton Mascarenas Arnold as the number 1 most impactful transfer portal addition. Not only is he a singular, very good football player, but you talk about the culture shift that is taking place within this USC defense. What better way to do it than bringing an off-ball linebacker or Mike linebacker that is kind of going to be the leader of this defense heading into 2024. That's why I'm going with Easton number 1. Going to number 2, I'm going to go Nate Clifton. Nate Clifton, I feel like most people don't even know Nate Clifton's on this USC football team. The way people talk about USC's depth on the inside of the defensive line, Nate Clifton has played over 1,700 snaps in the SEC. He's 6'4", 295. He's giving you an adequate, more than adequate body on the inside of this USC defensive line. I think what I love most about Nate Clifton, he's not necessarily the most flashy player, but he's a grown man going into a 6-year college football. He's very strong at the point of attack, can do some of that dirty work, although undersized on the inside of the defensive line. There's so much conversation about USC's depth on the inside of the defensive line. Nate Clifton coming in as this veteran body that can hold up at the Power 5 level, I think is a massive storyline. Give me Nate Clifton, the number 2 most impactful transfer portal addition. Now, going to number 3, it's kind of crazy to have Kamari Ramsey coming in at number 3 because I think this was the best pure football player that USC adds to their team in the transfer portal. Kamari Ramsey massive for this USC defense. All the very similar conversation we just had with Easton, Mascarenas, Arnold, I think you're going to say the exact same thing with a guy like Kamari Ramsey in the back end of this USC defense. Not only is he a really good football player, but he's a very heady football player. This is a guy that knows what's going on, especially in Dan Lynn's defense. You talk about how USC can quickly kind of change over this defense. Having a guy like Kamari Ramsey who knows Danton Lynn's defense inside and out coming with him to USC is going to be massive. I think that's going to mitigate some of the, quote unquote, growing pains of this USC defense picking up Danton Lynn's system. And then you look at Kamari Ramsey as a football player and say, this kid does everything you want at the safety position. He's a ball hawking safety that can get his hands on a lot of different footballs. He can hold up exceptionally well in man coverage, only giving up a 45% completion percentage when targeted 22 times last year. Phenomenal number for a safety. And Kamari Ramsey tackles. That was one of the bigger problems we saw with USC, kind of all over the defense, but specifically in the back end. As good as Kalen Bullock was, Bryson Shaw, not so much. I mean, both of those safeties, they really struggled to come up and tackle, especially in run support. I mean, Kamari Ramsey spent a lot of time playing inside the tackle box, being a run-supporting safety, but also can play that free safety spot. So the overall versatility that Kamari Ramsey has and brings on top of just being an exceptional football player, he's coming in at number 3. Going to number 4, I'm going to go running back Woody Marks. I think this was another transfer portal addition that maybe flew under the radar. Why is Woody Marks so important to this USC defense? I think it first starts with, a veteran presence. If USC did not bring in Woody Marks to the transfer portal, the running back room would have consisted of purely first and second year college football players. Guys that I really like, Quentin Joyner, somebody that I'm extremely high on heading into 2024, but it would have been a young, inexperienced running back room. What better way to inject some veteran presence into your running back room than an SEC running back that has ran for over 1,800 yards, caught for over 1,200 yards. That's probably the second thing that makes Woody Marks, at least in my opinion, such a special player for this USC defense. He is exceptional out of the backfield. He's really good in pass protection, but he's also a very good pass-catching running back as well. You have Miller Moss coming in at quarterback, a quarterback that's going to be a little bit more cerebral, getting the football out quickly. If you have a guy like Woody Marks who you can kind of get involved in some of those short intermediate passing concepts out of the backfield, I think Miller Moss is going to go to Woody Marks a lot. Woody Marks is he's a running back, obviously, but he's also this offensive chess piece that you can ask to do a lot more than a lot of other running backs across the country. Don't give Lincoln Riley chess pieces like that because he's going to make opposing defenses pay. So I think Woody Marks coming in at number 4, going to number 5, it's going to be another UCLA newcomer, and that's John Humphrey. Again, very similar conversation we had with Kamari Ramsey. One, having a guy follow Dan Lynn, helping this USC defense kind of pick up the Danton Lynn scheme. That's going to be really important. I think more importantly, Danton Lynn knows what John Humphrey does well. He's a long physical cornerback that wants to put hands on wide receivers. You take a look at last year, John Humphrey was a phenomenal football player for UCLA. I think the thing that stands out the most is just like Kamari Ramsey, John Humphrey tackles exceptionally well. Talk about some of the problems we had last year, guys like Damani Jackson just not being physical enough, not coming up and run support enough. John Humphrey only missed 5% of his tackles last year at the cornerback position. That is an exceptional number for a cornerback at the Power 5 level. And on top of that, only gave up a 57% completion percentage when targeted 52 times, a proven commodity in coverage at the cornerback position. This USC secondary, is one of the more improved position units that you'll see in the country. I expect this unit to take a massive step in the right direction and to kind of give some honorable mentions, if you will. Greedy Vance coming from Florida State. Greedy Vance is a very good football player at that nickel role. Him and Jalen Smith, I think, kind of battling it out for that starting nickel role. I think you have a lot of confidence in both of those players. And Greedy Vance is extremely experienced. You look at a guy in Achille Arnold coming in from Oregon State at the safety spot, another guy that's played a ton of football at the Power 5 level, another guy that probably could have made this list because you talk about changing this USC defensive culture. I think Achille Arnold is going to play a massive role in that. A couple other names, Jaden Maeva. I know quarterback too. I could see Lincoln Riley, number one, getting Jaden Maeva involved in the red zone with that big body and the athlete that he is. But I think more importantly, Jaden Maeva suddenly becomes, in my opinion, one of the best backup quarterbacks in the country. So if anything were to happen to Miller Moss or he has to come out for a drive, you have a quarterback that you can win a lot of football games with in Jaden Maeva, not to mention what he's going to bring to this USC team potentially in the 2025 season. Jay Fair, Kyle Ford, experienced wide receivers that probably aren't going to be the main contributors in the wide receiver room, but we were young at the wide receiver room and thin. I mean, we love guys like Deuce Robinson, Jacoby Lane, Mekhi Lemon, Zach Branch. That being said, they're all true sophomores. They're all relatively young wide receivers. So injecting some of that experience, proven commodity, veteran wide receivers, also some really good offseason moves. Those are my top 5. Would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. A lot of different ways you could go about it. A lot of different ways you could stack these names as well. Would love to hear from y'all in the comment section. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.